There's a pub in the Lambeth Road, biddy ma dole, dole, dole. I'll give you 30 shillings for your £1.10, with your £1.10, with your £1.10. I'll give you 30 shillings for your £1.10. January, February, March.
No.
April, May, June.
No.
July.
Aye.
Ottawa Journal, July 28, 1898. The Ottawa and New York Railway between Ottawa and Cornwall will be open for traffic in a short time. The new road branches off from the Canada-Atlantic Railway tracks a few miles out of Ottawa and runs south to Ramsay's Corners, 7 miles from Ottawa. From Ramsay's, the road passes through Piperville and Edwards in a level section of country. A siding has been put in at Edwards, but no station so far has been built. It will probably be a flag station. Edwards district is not very thickly settled, but it is a comparatively new county to the farming community and is being greatly improved. When the engines of the Ottawa-New York Railway first roared through the Ottawa Valley in the summer of 1898, they carried with them the promise of progress for the rural inhabitants of Gloucester, Osgoode, and Russell townships. The new railroad represented opportunity and opened its surroundings up to both physical and economic development. In an effort to promote settlement in the budding village of Edwards, the administration of the new line agreed to donate a parcel of land adjacent to the tracks for the building of St. James Anglican Church, a gesture that appealed greatly to the predominantly Protestant local farm families like the Harrisons, Pattersons, Waddells, and McCooeys. By the dawn of the 20th century, those families who had cultivated the land in the decades preceding the arrival of the railroad were joined by others, like the Mitchells, Quinns, Bradleys, and Bickertons. Together, they would build a community on a foundation of common faith, and together they would strive for a better tomorrow. Ottawa Evening Journal, July 13th, 1906. The 12th of July celebration of Russell District No. 2 was held yesterday in Mr. Ben Stearns Grove, 2 miles from Russell. About 2,000 were present, and the day was spent quite pleasantly. A number of Orange lodges were represented, and the speakers were Reverend Mr. Stewart of Moorwood, Reverend Mr. Sadler of Russell, and Reverend Mr. Baldwin of Metcalfe. The lodges on hand were Russell, Marvelville, Canamore, Vernon, Metcalfe, Vernon Orange Young Britons, and Russell Orange Young Britons. The Russell and Moorwood brass bands were in attendance, and a football match between Moorwood and Marvelville was won by Moorwood. As promised, the new railway brought growth to Edwards, and as the trains rolled on, so too did the development of the village. In 1900, the Knox Baptist Church was opened. In the following years, a post office and a school, built in union with Gloucester Township, were added to the landscape. By 1911, amidst swirling political winds on provincial, national, and international matters of liberty, the leading men of Edwards sought to strengthen and solidify their community by organizing an Orange Lodge. In doing so, these patriarchs were following the blueprint drawn by civic leaders like James Little, William Hamilton, and Thomas Morrow, who in the mid-1800s had organized and opened lodges in the neighboring settlements of South Gloucester. North Russell, and Hawthorne. By the time the Edwards Orange Lodge was warranted in 1911, no fewer than 50 lodges were operating within Carleton County, where the customs, traditions, and ideologies of Orangism were not only embraced, but worn as a badge of honor, an identifiable label that spoke of deep-rooted cultural ties to the British Empire. In writing her memoirs on a lifetime lived in the nearby village of Metcalfe, Frances Iveson recalled the splendor and circumstance that accompanied annual 12th of July celebrations in her beloved hometown, as well as the deeply proclaimed loyalty to King William of Orange that was felt by the area's inhabitants.
The 12th of July was a gala day for loyal Orange members and their families. Women and children, for some the only outing of the year, flaunted their allegiance to King Billy on the sidelines with yellow and blue ribbons, scarves, or sashes draped over their white flounced dresses, freshly laundered in starch for the occasion. Hustle and bustle absorbed the village. The grand march to the picnic ground surpassed all. Each King Billy wore a colorful mesh coverlet with deep fringe. The horse's head bore arch-shaped decorations composed of colorful tissue paper rosettes, the handiwork of wives, sisters, and sweethearts. Young Britons in basic dress, lily white shirts and dark trousers followed in pairs. Long orange and royal blue waist sashes, heavily tasseled, flipped rhythmically to and fro with body movements. One of the real old-timers in attendance on the 12th was Jack Dowser. And still does the theme of their glory remain. While sitting on the doorsteps of his Spring Hill home, the usual morning conversation ended thus. Waving arms toward respective corners, occupied with the cemetery and school, Jack proclaimed with deep conviction, "You know, if the Orange Hall were on this corner, and the Church of England were on that corner over there, and both caught fire at the same time, I would go to help save the Orange Hall." On such allegiance, the Order of Orangemen and Young Britons was founded in the township of Osgood.
The Protestant boys can carry the day.
Within the walls of the Edwards Orange Hall rests a copy of the Holy Bible with an inscription reading, "To Lodge number 2297, Edwards, as a small token for the kind sympathy shown to us on the death of our dear little ones." The Bible was a gift of appreciation to the Orangemen of Edwards for providing support and assistance to local farmers Andrew and Martha Curran after a horrific and unspeakable tragedy struck their household on Christmas morning, 1912. Ottawa Journal, Friday, December 27th, 1912. The overheating of a stovepipe was the cause of a disastrous fire, which claimed the lives of 3 children of Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Curran, Edward Station, on Christmas morning. The rapidity with which the flames spread prevented anything from being done, and the parents, after several heroic attempts to get at the victims, had to practically stand by and see them burn to death. About 5 o'clock, Mr. and Mrs. Curran went to the stable to hitch up the horses, being absent about 15 minutes. The 3 children at the time were still in bed sleeping. Upon returning, the dwelling was a mass of flames. Both mother and father made desperate attempts to get at the children, but were driven back by the flames. Neighbors were summoned, but nothing could be done, and in a wonderfully short time, the house was burned to the ground. The charred bodies of the 3 children were found amongst the ruins. Their names and ages were Albert, 13, Annie, 9, and Eva Jane, 2. The remains of the victims were interred yesterday. Andrew Curran had moved his family to Osgood Township after years of toiling as a carpenter in the city of Ottawa. Upon arriving and settling a farm near Edwards, Curran quickly aligned himself with other ambitious and like-minded men who on November 10th, 1911, petitioned the Grand Orange Lodge of British North America to grant a permanent warrant to Loyal Orange Lodge number 2297. On March 2nd, 1912, approval was granted. As the first worshipful master, Curran undoubtedly held high hopes for the future of his lodge, his brethren, and himself. But the unfathomable catastrophe that befell him and his wife on that fateful Christmas morning would forever alter the course of his life and the Orange Lodge he helped to establish. In the spring of 1913, Andrew Curran, his wife Martha, his 5-year-old daughter Beatrice Elizabeth, and his infant daughter Annie, who was born a little more than a month after the house fire that claimed 3 of her siblings, left the hardship of Edwards behind them and moved back to Ottawa. Curran resigned his position as worshipful master and transferred his membership to Rosemont Loyal Orange Lodge number 126. 2 years later, 4 days before Christmas, Andrew Curran died of a cerebral hemorrhage. He was 51 years old.